Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome to Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. This is Dr. Sandra Marie, and today we'll be talking with Siris Rivas-Verdejo from Empowering Light Language. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Siris, you are a speech-language pathologist, a life coach, a learning behavioral specialist, and an energetic healer. When we first talked, we discussed how we initially were both keeping our day jobs separate from our energetic spiritual work and worlds. You dipped your toe a little bit into crossing over and had some positive responses. I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself with the listeners and talk a bit about the responses you started getting when you offered different possibilities to your clients.
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. Yes, it's been really interesting. I think a lot of us out there who are healers and givers and seekers and play around with some of these weird and different energies, or at least that's what other people will project at us, that they're weird and different, will often feel like they have to hide this. And that was definitely a consideration for me as a speech language pathologist, learning behavioral specialist, and feeding therapist. I was seeing children in the homes during early intervention, which is birth to 3 services. I was also seeing children in schools. It was this thing that I knew was amazing and effective and had created so much space in my world. And yet it took me a while for me to actually mention it to my clients, as much as I was often working and using these energies to provide greater progress and results with their children. One of my parents was like, hey, I love this. I know we're doing really well. Is there anything else that I could do to help my child out? And I was like, well, there's this weird and different thing that I do that has been really helpful for me, that has created a lot more space, that really helps me show up more and demonstrate what I know. I've already been doing this with your child in a more indirect way, but if you'd like, I can show you how to do this directly, explicitly, so that you have this as part of your toolbox and arsenal. And man, the parents were like the ones that were open to it, because only the ones that were open to it ask, right? Like,
True.
She asked, a couple of them asked, I gave them sessions. I told them how they could use this with their child, and a couple things showed up. One, they were more relaxed. They were like, oh, wow, when I'm more relaxed, when I take care of myself, my kid perceives it and then they do better. What? A lot of parents know this, and yet it's not a lack of awareness or a lack of knowing. It's the choosing it that's the difficult part. How do I do this? What would it look like? Who's going to hold me accountable to do this when I'm not really seeing anybody else? All these other parents are go, go, go as well. What would this even look like? And so I was able to, with a few of my parents initially, and now way more in the last couple of years, incorporate these energetic tools in addition to the evidence-based, more traditional tools.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's funny how that works out, right? I love how the energy gets pulled together. It's beautiful. So you're making a lot of unique progress, I would assume.
Yes. My specialty, a lot of the kiddos I work with in particular, more than others, is I work with a lot of emotionally, behaviorally challenged kids, kiddos that have autism, ADD, ADHD, those that have phonological disorders, or they'll have sensory-based feeding difficulties. All of that involves bodies, involves communication, and involves energy. And when I frame it that way for myself, when I finally got that aha, like, why am I separating this? It's all here. Everything that everything that I've been doing included communication, bodies, and energy. Why would I think that adding on these energetic tools and actually empowering my parents and empowering my clients with these tools would be counter to my mission and vision? So as soon as I got over myself, got out of my own way and got out of the way, my clients having this progress, beautiful things started to show up. Just really lovely.
I can only imagine. Do you have like a scenario that you could share?
Yeah, gosh, so many. So I've been working with families and kiddos since I was a child myself, and then professionally for about 16 years now. There's a kiddo I'm thinking of in particular right now who has autism. I went and I was seeing him when he was about 18 months old. He was starting to talk, but not talking as much as would be expected for that age. And he would throw these fits, these tantrums, like, just throwing things, and would get even really aggressive. I really wanted to involve the mom. So some people, when they do this type of work, even though we're told the best practice is for the parents to be involved, the caregivers to be involved, the parents don't always agree to it. They want to kind of take a break and they're taking care of the other kids, or they're in the kitchen cooking, or they're busy. Like if it's an educator and I'm in a daycare, they're wrangling the other kids, so it isn't quite possible. But with this mom, even though oftentimes she would be cooking during the sessions, she'd be peeking in and listening. And absolutely, when he was tantruming, as he was this day, she was like, what's going on? She came in, she's like, is he okay? What's going on? I did this thing where I grabbed his hands and I looked at him right in the eyes. I always had it so that he had a little stool to sit on, and I would sit on the floor in front of him. And I grabbed his hands and I just flowed energy toward him. And then I was like, hey, would you like some head magic? And he nodded, because he wasn't very verbal, like I said. He nodded, though. He didn't, and this is the first time I'd ever asked him this. It wasn't about the words. He perceived the energy of the question, of that possibility. So he nodded. The mom was like, what's going on in the background? And then I grabbed his head and I gave him some firm pressure, which is something I've learned from my occupational therapy colleagues. I love occupational therapies and I've learned so much from them, and they complement and they work really well with the energetic tools. And then with the firm pressure as well, I flowed even more energy, asking for whatever energy he needed from my body. And how I do this too is I invited the energy to start from behind me, from all of the universe, through my body to him. So it's not like it's depleting me, because there's infinite amount of energy in the universe, right?
Right.
And he just melted. He was like, ugh, and like butter. And he stopped yelling, and he was he just looked blissed out. And the mom saw all of this transformation within seconds. She asked me, what did you do? How did you do that? I only saw him 1 hour once a week. She's with him all the time, of course. She's a stay-at-home mom. What I observed in that moment was probably only a snapshot of what she deals with all the time, where he tantrums a lot, where he throws things a lot. If she saw there a peak of this possible future where he was less frustrated, where she was judging herself less, where she could have more ease, more energy. So I taught her how to do that. She started doing it. And he'd already been making some beautiful progress in the speech therapy we're doing. And then he just really took off, and he was able to need less and less therapies and transitioned into the schools. And he's doing really well. She still sends me photos of him and everything.
Wow, that is amazing and such a beautiful story. I really want to thank you for your service and your work, especially with that population. They're special, and you're such a gift to everyone involved with that. I would like to segue just a little bit. People have a sense of the seen and the unseen, like just in that example that you just gave, what the mom saw and what you were doing in the background with the energy exchange with that. People do not necessarily seem real comfortable to talk about the seen and the unseen for many reasons. I feel like a lot of it is fear and judgment might play a big role in it. You have an academy that you offer for the seen and the unseen. That sounds very intriguing to me. Do share.
Yes, the academy came about from a lot of encouragement from my team, both my Phantastical Creature Crew team, my guides, and also the people who actually have bodies that are seen, that I can see and interact with on a direct basis, that were kicking my butt and was like, hey, you have all these tools, you've been doing these videos, you have these different sessions. The world is asking for more. And curiously, this was showing up around 2019. So what were they aware of and what were we aware of, huh?
Interesting.
We started having conversations about what this would look like. We wanted my Facebook group that's called Soaring Beyond Definition to be a foyer into, like an entranceway into this academy, because I'd already been doing videos in there and imparting different tools in there. The academy for the seen and unseen are for people who actually get that the unseen is valuable, that's where a lot of the possibility, the hope, what we perceive as what we'd like to have in the future, that's where it is. That's where the seeds of it lie. What if we could actually add to all these different energies to our arsenal that we could actually use to create with both the seen and the unseen instead of waiting for proof, evidence, approval from anybody else? We play with all of these different energies and modalities, from energy flows, shamanism, the living and dying body process, access consciousness tools, tantra, theta healing. There were so many different things that we explored that I have training in. People were getting sessions in the academy, and it started off with this beautiful feedback because each month had a different theme where we were playing with different unseen themes and energies. And when I said my Phantastical Creature Crew earlier, I truly mean that as a fantastical is with a PH, Phantastical. I think I spelled that correctly. So fantastical is in the phantom, the things that are unseen. And then fantastic is in there, like you want to be fantastic. You want to have a sense of joy and ease with it. And all is in all of you. So fantastical was this word that came about over the course of a conversation I had with a colleague, Sailor Shining Star. We wanted people to actually get direct practice tapping into their crew, their Phantastical Creature Crew. And that could be winged creatures, and winged creatures can be dragons or angels or fairies or something that has never been named before, but that somebody's aware of, right? That could be trees and all of the nature spirits. That was another month's theme where we're connecting around the world through the roots of the trees, just like the roots of the trees, and using that to inspire us to, instead of keep us isolated, to actually connect with all these other energies and the people around the world. It not be a way that it's an upheaval or like a pressure and weight on us, a burden, but actually it be like, hey, we are not alone. The fact that this showed up when so many people felt so alone was just really, really beautiful and really intense. It was really a lot of energy when we first started it. And now it's softened into this beautiful space where there's these different little mini groups and offshoots that have come off of it, including the Expansive Energies group, which is a group where people really prioritize self-care for those of people who are often giving and making everybody else first. For you to be able to care for others more effectively, you have to care for yourself. So the people in the group, we meet twice a month for 45 minutes, and they receive group therapeutic energy work. It's a space for people to get live coaching, for them to really just receive for once. For some of them, especially when you're first in the group, you're like, wow, I really haven't been receiving as much as I thought. That's not an uncommon commentary that people say, oh, I thought I was doing good.
I absolutely bet.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, no, I really have been making my kids, my partner, my family, my clients, everything. Well, then where are you in that? Where are you in your life?
So beautiful. And the synchronicities in that are amazing. And it just lets you know that there's just so much more, right? With the timing and everything that came together and how it's flowing and it's growing and how it's flowing with what is all happening in the current state of affairs. You do like clearings and activations as well when you do these type of things?
Absolutely, because it's amazing how many of us and how much, I mean, even for me, I still need to continue to awaken to more possibilities and energies. There's never a cap. There's not a limit to how much more we could receive and perceive and create in the world. Yes, I provide activations and clearings because for the living and dying body process, this is a perfect example of it. It's called living and dying body process because the living is what we add to create more. You're activating, you're adding these different energies, you're adding this awareness, this inspiration, these action steps that will move you toward what you truly desire. And then the dying side of it is not what we've been told. A lot of people confuse dying with death, and they're very different energies. Dying is actually what you let go of to create more. That could be letting go of the judgment. That could be letting go of the trauma. That could be letting go of that conversation you had with your friend that you keep replaying in your head that's distracting you or that you're using to judge yourself with. And that'll, when you let those things go, how much more space, how much more ease, how much more of you would you have? This piece of the activations, well, we awaken these energies within us that may be shut down, buried, asleep. And then we also clear the way with the dying. We let go of these things that might be solid and dense in our bodies, in our realities, so that we could have the clarity of what exuberant living could be like for us. And for each of us, it's going to be totally different.
I totally agree. We all do that at some point where we get stuck with something. And like you said, the conversation that we keep revisiting in our head, I think it's really important. And I am excited that you shared that it's an ongoing journey. There is no, I've hit the pinnacle of the mountain. We're constantly evolving and growing and awakening. I would like to go just a little bit backwards, and I'm not really sure what the answer, or if there is an answer to this question. What would you say your journey or moment of awakening was when you realized that you could receive downloads or you had the authority or ability to provide activations, the energy, the awakening? How did you get to that point? Or was it something that was always innately a part of you even when you were growing up?
Gosh, that's a powerful, powerful question. I say that because there's so many different aspects of it that come up as you're asking me that. I think that it was always there. I think that for most of us, it's always there. Now, when I had that, aha, like, this is what's going on, was a couple of different moments. I'm very stubborn. It wasn't just a one and done. It was like a series of moments in my life that led me to the awareness of, oh, this is what's going on. One was I would often feel really tired or really stressed out after helping other people. And I'm very extroverted. I'm very social. I love hosting my game nights, my dinner parties, love gathering my friends. And yet there were some times where I would be like, oh, wow, they feel amazing now after I was talking to them. And I feel like crap. What's that about? After multiple occasions of that, I remember clearly saying, I feel like a container of everyone's stuff. I need to find a way to empty out this container, and I don't see a way to empty it out. I was doing therapies, I was doing self-care, I was working out, and there was nothing. It was still all of this stuff that I was very aware that I was holding on to, and I just didn't have a way to empty it out. Then I was chronically sick. I had chronic pain. I had anxiety and depression. I had insomnia where I was only getting maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. I was like, this isn't the kind of life that I want to have. And I was so sick and my immune system was so run down that the doctors in my 20s, the doctors were saying, well, if you don't do something soon, you're going to get pneumonia and you're going to die. Because I was having chronic sinus infections that then escalated to chronic bronchitis. And that was just the respiratory system. I also had reproductive health issues. It was just my whole system. All these different things were going on. And I was like, there has to be this connection between me feeling like I'm holding on to all these people's stuff and not being able to empty out this container that is my body and this health stuff that I'm dealing with. I didn't give up. I kept going to one specialist after another, and it takes a lot. Going to one therapist after another, going to one specialist after another. It can be exhausting. You're like, I don't want to say this whole long history, all the surgeries, all the car accidents, all the, procedures, like, you just don't want to talk about it. But I wanted to live. So I was like, well, I can't give up on this. My mom, in her wonderful brilliance, found this woman who was a Reiki master, Dr. Barbara Roca in Winfield, Illinois. All of a sudden, I had my first Reiki session and I didn't have any pain anymore. And I had so much space. And I was like, oh, I found a way to empty out the container. Okay. This is amazing. Why doesn't everybody know about this, right? Like, oh, this is what I've been asking for. And so they addressed the physical and a bit with the sleep and anxiety. I still had a bit of the anxiety and depression, but I was chipping away at it. And I recognized, oh, I am aware of other people's stuff. I am aware of these things. And then I started getting trained. I started doing Reiki training. I'm a Reiki master and instructor. Then I started playing around with theta healing and tantra and shamanism. I was just this ravenous sponge, like picture like a comic book horror movie sponge, like crashing through the buildings, like, what more? I could not get enough of learning about all these different energies, because with each training, more space showed up. With each class, more joy. I was just getting so much clarity on my abilities. And so that was like, wow, I guess I'm more psychic and more aware than I ever realized. Oh, so those times when I would go to the mall and I'd walk out limping, I probably picked up on that person that had a limp or that had some medical issue, and I put it in my body. it came from a place of caring, thinking that unconsciously, like I was healing them. But one, if they didn't ask for it, and two, if I didn't have a way to get it out of my body, I'm not doing anybody any good. After I experienced this more and more and then knew of a way to get rid of it, I was like, well, what if I didn't actually take it on to begin with? What if we actually had tools, or we didn't actually take on the stuff to begin with? Or if we did take it on, we could dissipate it out of our bodies faster and faster. So that's what made me search more and more for all these different possibilities. And then I was giving these different private sessions and all these different modalities that I mentioned, and seeing people have relief and choose not to die. Like there were a lot of people that would see me that were suicidal, that were like, I'm not really sure why I'm here. Just being so honored to invite them to actually having a sense of what true living could be like for them. And then this new personality showed up in my sessions. And I was like, what is this? This is new. It was a different energy that wasn't like any of these other modalities that I'd played around with. And I started talking to my body, as I'd been doing now at that point for years, and talking with the earth, something that I also recognize was part of my chronic pain in the past. And I would talk with the earth, and I was like, what is this what's this thing that's showing up? This is new entity. That's where the living and dying body process came about, was me co-creating it with my body and the earth, because it contributes to the earth. When people have a sense of living, a sense of joy, it's like fertilizer for the earth. When we give up all the crap that's stuck in our bodies that is not serving us, that's also fertilizer for the earth. So the earth is immensely grateful for when we let this stuff go, because we actually get to then have clarity on how our choices are either contributing to the earth and to other bodies, or destroying the earth and other bodies. And it's been an amazing journey ever since, and it keeps going.
Wow, what an evolutionary journey that you're on, that you started with, where you've gotten to, all the different pieces, parts of those evolutionary steps. And I can only imagine where you are yet to go with it. That is, I got chills thinking about it. You talked a little bit about your journey and helping people, and now you speak it from a positive versus the symptomatology part of it, is that you help people get clear and acknowledge what is brilliant, magical, and a gift about themselves.
It's true.
You want to talk a little bit more about that shift?
Well, I think that a lot of people, in addition to what you mentioned earlier about worrying about being judged or persecuted or marginalized in some way, if they talk about these maybe uncomfortable or difficult, different conversations, the other aspect of it as well is that since we never were taught in schools how to use our gifts of awareness, our gifts of perception, of receiving for our advantage, the only examples that people often see in movies, in TV shows, in books and literature is the overwhelm, is the sensory overload, is the, I don't know how to handle it, it gets out of control, I destroy a planet without thinking about it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so they avoid discovering, exploring, and actually utilizing their gifts because of these depictions of it. There's not positive examples of it on a consistent basis. And there's not enough people that have been talking about this to inspire those that are hesitant. That, you know, I was thought that my license would be taken away, that the kids I was going to work with were going to be taken away from me if I came out as a healer, as I came out as someone that does this type of therapeutic energy work. I now know on the other side of it that that's not true, but I get it. I absolutely get their concerns. I was there. There are still people that may not want to interact with you in the same way, or that they might see you differently. What I've learned is that those people are not for me. I know what I bring to the table. I know the changes that I've been able to facilitate and invite people to. I've opened so many doorways, and I plan to open so many more doorways, inviting people to walk through them to a greater possibility, that if they don't want that, if they're not interested in that, if they're waiting for this research, if they're waiting for this other thing, I'll like, okay, I'll be here. You go and wait for that. I'll be over here changing other people's lives and creating a different possibility for myself. And I had to be willing to do that, because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here. I would not be alive on this planet. I'm thinking, how many people would be held captive to those lies if I didn't speak out on this anymore? If I kept hiding, if I didn't invite people to consider this, for those that are asking for it. I don't go out and have a bullhorn, like yell at people, in the streets and things like that. But for those that are asking to actually know how to use their gifts, because they're already aware that they're aware, they're already feeling the overwhelm. They're already feeling that like, oh, I'm really tired after I'm interacting with people. Or I'm really picking up on a lot of stuff. If they would like to have more ease with that, why wouldn't I say, hey, I'm here. Let's create something different together. Let them be in that jail cell indefinitely. That's not the world that I'd like to be in. So why would I, but through my choices or lack of choice, create that kind of world?
I love you provide opportunities, and who will come will come. So good for you. I appreciate you doing the work. That is what is at the crux of this podcast and motivated it. I appreciate people like you who are willing to come out, have the conversation. Let's get it out there. Let's start normalizing these things. I love your description of how it's portrayed in different medias and societies. I feel like we're not that far away. I really look forward to a major retool of our education system where a lot of these things are integrated so that the kids start out much younger. They're moving along a little bit quicker than we have, so to speak. And I think conversations like this and putting it out there are what's going to make the difference. It's truly one person at a time at this point in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd be rocking it.
Well, and I really commend you. I mean, this is part of why I was so excited to be on your podcast is I love what you're creating in the world, what you're inviting people to. And it's so diverse. It's so inclusive. It's so diverse, all these different topics and different strategies and perspectives that you're discussing on here. I agree with you. If these tools, think about all the guests you've had on, if every single one of them were available as a possible book or a possible workshop, a possible little assembly activity for kiddos in elementary schools or in preschools, we would have a completely different world. It would be just so different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's happening.
Right? The mental and emotional health alone, it would be astounding. That's one of the things that when people are like, Siris, you talk about the world changing and all this stuff, and I don't want necessarily think I can take on the whole world. I was like, I'm not taking on the whole world on my own. You're going to be a part of my team. By you taking care of yourself and you having more space and more clarity and more joy, everybody that you interact with, that rippling out effect is going to happen. So you're already affecting the world. Thank you for that. That's it. So if people just start with their own self-care and actually making sure that they include themselves in the equation of their lives more and more, we're already going to be getting there way faster, like you said.
And you're playing a role in it. We're all playing a role in it. We're spiritual warriors out there making a difference. And I love how you said that too. It's a team. It's everyone. And everyone that we engage, that we can shift their energy into ease and joy and love, it just changes the game in such a positive way. What else do you have going on that you're doing these days?
Gosh, well, speaking of the schools, my idea is I do a lot of staff trainings in schools. I love doing it for companies and things like that to make sure that they're having self-care in there, but also that they're aware of communication styles and how that intersects with their awareness of bodies and energy. And so how that affects work settings, how that affects families is just pervasive. It's just all over the place. I love that. I do family and child coaching. So I actually create personalized plans for families. Sometimes there's multiple families involved in the family plan because I had an example recently where it was the grandparents and then the dad with the new wife and the mom with the new husband. And we were all coordinating in that plan so that they could all co-parent more effectively because the children were going through to all these different households and making sure that people were considering their self-care. They were looking at the family environment. And if the family environment was cueing the habits and behaviors that were desired, or if it was cueing the habits and behaviors that were undesired, you have to take into account the bodies and how the bodies are needing to be nurtured when you're creating a type of plan like that. How does each body learn and process information and process all the sensory input? I love doing that. I take about 10 families at a time just because it's quite a bit of work on my end and it's high quality to do all of that. And then I also do a lot of body and relationship coaching with people, either individuals or couples that want to have a greater communication with themselves so that they can make sure they have a sense of joy and that they're creating something individually or together that is what they'd really like, that's going to be sustainable moving forward. And so some people use those individual sessions to work on their business, because that's also communication, energy, and bodies. Some people use it for how they're learning, if they're learning a new skill, or for their relationships, or just their own self-care, like making sure that when they're showing up in their lives, that they're making sure that they're actually having their needs met, and not just like years later, how did I get here? How did I get here that I have no idea who I am or what I like, or that I'm doing all these things for everyone else? And when was the last time I actually did something for myself that I truly enjoyed? A lot of people come to me when they're at that crossroads where they're like, I really want to make sure moving forward that I don't keep repeating these certain limiting patterns. And so we go through these different limiting patterns, and I have specific exercises that address the limiting patterns that are actually relevant to them.
That is just amazing work. I love that you're working with families. I can only imagine the energy that goes in with it. It's a beautiful thing because it meets the need of the realities of what's happening right now in our society. So I love where you're meeting people where they're at and providing the services that are going to make a difference. That's awesome.
I was just going to say it really took off in the pandemic because so many families had to all of a sudden take on their usual tasks and demands, and then also educating their kids and doing the counseling, and then making sure that they were still nurturing their relationships and their own health. Even though a lot of the students are back in the schools that want to be back in the schools, or that can be back in the schools, that's not the case for everyone. And I think the parents especially got a big aha there, because it was highlighting all the maybe underlying weaknesses or underlying places where it wasn't where they wanted it. And it got really exacerbated during a very intense time for all of us. I find it very gratifying. The parents that find me are always exactly the parents I should be working with. And there's a lot of gratitude on both ends. And I would love to see more families and individuals that would really like to have that empowerment and build up their confidence, knowing that what they're choosing is going to lead them to where they want to go.
You know, it's always amazing to me because certainly that time in 2019, 2021 with the pandemic and all the changes were very difficult. It really brought to light issues that either unconsciously people weren't aware of, or that they just chose not to deal with because they didn't feel like they were able to deal with it. Look at all the good that's coming out of it right now, and the shifts and the differences because that happened.
Yes. I agree. And what else is possible? Like, what else can show up, especially if more people are caring for themselves and clearing out all the muck in their bodies and in their worlds that stop them from seeing maybe some other gift, some other thing that could show up in the world that has never existed, that is in them to create, to institute in the world.
So much more to provide yet. Again, especially with you, as you talked about your evolutionary journey, like I would love to touch base with you in a year and 5 years and 10 years, because I think it's going to be just amazing what you're doing as you continue to consciously evolve. It's truly a beautiful thing. There's more and more people, I believe, that are open to it now. It's just going to be really interesting to watch this play out in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to do whatever I can to create that. Yes, let's definitely keep in touch. I'll keep checking in and hearing your voice on the podcast for sure. And, maybe you'll check out my podcast as well. It's called Choosing a Different Future with Siris.
Okay, awesome. Tell me a little bit more about the podcast.
The podcast came about from having all these amazing people that I was meeting through trainings, through life experiences, that I've gotten to be blessed with their presence in different ways, who through themselves and their own personal journey, or through the work that they do in their businesses, they invite people to a different possibility through their choices. Now we're on like the 4th season or so, and I'm on a new network that's a global network that broadcasts to over 450 platforms for smart TV and podcasts. Every couple of weeks I have guests. Before it was always me talking with a guest, which I love. But now I get to share and impart my experiences and the tools that I provide in some of my classes and trainings. And then every couple of weeks I have a guest on that also then will showcase how their personal journey or how their business invites people to choose to create a different possibility that's beyond what has been projected or expected of us. That's the key thing, is that for all of us, we have these projections and expectations that have been propelled our way from family, friends, society, our race, our gender. If we were actually truly functioning from a clean slate where we weren't actually choosing based on what is expected and what we would really like and what would light us up, I wonder what we would choose. And so we talk about all these different themes, from how to listen to children's bodies and energies, to relationships, to overcoming codependence, to out creating trauma. There's been so many different awesome guests. We've had artists, we've had doctors on there, just all these different things. It's been really lovely, and it lights me up to be able to have this expanded reach and to talk to people about things that are exactly what we were talking about today, where it invites people to have these considerations and conversations. They don't have anybody else to talk to about it, or they'd like to have more of that as a part of their lives.
Nice. That sounds very energizing and really getting you on that positive track. I love it. Sidi, I do want to thank you very much for being a guest on Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. Any last words or thoughts you would like to leave for the listeners?
Just that I'm just so grateful to be on here. I'm so grateful for, if you've made it to this point of our conversation, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to reach out to me. My website's empoweringlightlanguage.com. My email's empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. I'm very responsive. I just really invite everybody that's listening to listen to their bodies, to consider what they could let go of to create more and what they could add to create more, and let those awarenesses show up in whatever ways that show up without having to feel like it needs to be approved by anybody else. We each know what's going to work for us, and what if we could actually choose it more and more.
Wow, very important and powerful words. Sidi, you are truly an amazing soul. Again, thank you for your service to others and your service to humanity. I want to thank all our listeners out there for taking time out of their day to join us. Until next time, remember, take time to embrace that wild soul. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.